I want you to picture this: a lone samurai scout during the Battle of Sekigahara in 1600, moving through a labyrinth of mist-covered mountain paths. For almost 72 straight hours, he stayed awake, alert, and impossibly sharp, while warriors all around him collapsed from exhaustion. Historians wrote that he moved as if guided by something invisible, an inner fire, a hidden force. At the time, no one could explain how a single man survived the maze. But now, we know he carried a 400-year secret inside his own breath. Let me ask you something. Have you ever pushed yourself so hard that your mind felt like it was shutting down before your body did? Because if a samurai could maintain perfect awareness on the edge of death, what could you unlock in just 90 seconds? Here's the part that shook me the most. Modern researchers say that one specific breathing rhythm can increase focus and cognitive performance by more than 200%. When I read that, I didn't believe it. Not until I tried it myself. And the samurai. They already had that rhythm. They called it ibuki, a sharp, rhythmic breath that acted as an invisible weapon, circulating pure ki through the hora, the belly center that governed their energy, clarity, and spirit. As I started practicing the same breath, I felt the first spark of what those warriors might have felt. It was like someone dimmed a noisy room and turned on a single bright beam of awareness. And it all starts with how you breathe, not how you fight. Before we get to the secret itself, we have to return to the landscape where it was born. The year is 1600. Japan stands on the edge of transformation, a nation divided between rival factions, each preparing for what would become the Battle of Sekigahara, the clash that would decide the fate of the entire country. The air at dawn was thick with fog and the metallic scent of anticipation. Soldiers from the eastern and western armies gathered in the valleys, their armor creaking, their horses restless, their breaths visible in the cold morning air. People knew this battle would not just shape a day, it would shape centuries. I remember the first time I read the historical accounts of that morning. The terrain itself was described like a living maze. Narrow trails cutting through forests, sudden turns, cliffs hidden behind curtains of mist. Messages had to be delivered. Strategies had to be executed. Scouts had to move unseen. One wrong step, and a warrior could vanish into an enemy ambush, or lose hours wandering through confusing mountain paths. This environment was brutal not just on the body, but on the mind. Fatigue was a weapon. Getting lost was a death sentence. And yet, some survived through sheer clarity and discipline. Clarity sharpened by a method most modern people have never even heard of. As armies clashed and chaos thundered across the valley floor, a few select warriors used a technique to maintain unwavering focus. Even when the earth shook with the march of tens of thousands of soldiers, even when exhaustion dragged at their bones, they held a kind of internal stillness. I used to wonder, how could anyone maintain that level of awareness in conditions like that? And the deeper I looked, the clearer it became. There was something hidden beneath the surface of these stories, something far more powerful than luck or instinct. Among the many warriors who moved through the fog of Sekigahara, one name appears again and again in the lesser-known chronicles: Sakon Tadakatsu. He wasn't a famous general. He wasn't a legendary duelist. He was a scout, one of the few entrusted with navigating the mountain maze, carrying critical intelligence between fragmented units of the Eastern Army. Witnesses wrote that Sakon moved with eyes bright as dawn, even after days without rest. While others faltered, he walked as though guided by something within, something deeper than muscle or stamina. For a long time, people assumed it was myth-making, a heroic exaggeration. But tucked into old Ryu manuscripts and martial scrolls was the explanation that pulled everything into focus. Sakon practiced ibuki, not the soft meditative breath modern practitioners talk about, but the original warrior form. Sharp, deliberate, rhythmic, and powerful. A kind of breathing designed not to calm you, but to awaken you, to ignite your ki, to cut through fatigue like a blade cuts through armor. In one reenactment account, Sakon was described sitting beneath a cedar tree, minutes before making one of the riskiest crossings of the battlefield. He inhaled through the nose until his belly expanded like a drum. He held it, not in his chest, but low, deep, centered. And then he released the breath in a long, controlled stream that misted the cold morning air. He repeated it again and again, each cycle sharpening him, not relaxing him. He wasn't meditating, he was preparing. He was charging an invisible weapon housed inside his own lungs. When I first read that, I remember pausing, feeling a strange pull in my chest. This wasn't just a technique. It was a survival skill, a battlefield tool, a 400-year secret designed to keep warriors awake, oriented, and fully alive even when their world was collapsing around them. The more I dug into the old writings, the more I realized that ibuki wasn't just breath. It was a bridge between physical endurance and unwavering awareness, between the body and the ki, between clarity and chaos. And I started to wonder, if this technique kept a man like Sakon stable through 72 hours of danger, what would happen if I tried it myself? The first time I tried ibuki, I didn't expect much. I had read the stories, I had studied the scrolls, but history always feels larger than life, like something belonging to people stronger, braver, or more disciplined than us. Still, something about Sakon's story stayed with me. The idea that a single breath, repeated with intention, could keep a warrior awake for 72 hours? It sounded impossible, but it also sounded like a challenge. So one night, while I was fighting my own modern battlefield, an overdue project, a tired mind, a laptop screen burning into my eyes, I decided to try it. I sat upright, placed a hand on my belly the way the old Ryu manuals described, and began the first inhale. It was strange. The breath didn't feel peaceful. It felt charged. Not like meditation, more like switching on a furnace somewhere deep inside my abdomen. With each cycle, my mind grew clearer. Not calmer, clearer. It was as if someone wiped fog off the lens of my awareness. I could suddenly feel the center of my body, the place the samurai called the hara, and there was a sensation I had only ever read about. A pressure, a warmth, a gathering of something living. Was this ki? I don't know, but something was definitely happening. After 3 minutes, the tiredness in my eyes faded. After 5, I felt strangely awake, present in a way caffeine had never given me. And after 10, I understood something that the old stories had been trying to say all along. Ibuki wasn't meant to relax you. It was meant to awaken the internal warrior, to bring you into a state where you can't drift, can't fade, can't lose yourself to exhaustion. And that was the moment I realized why Sakon survived the maze. It wasn't strength. It wasn't luck. It was breath, refined through centuries, sharpened like a blade, tested in the harshest conditions imaginable. That night, I made a quiet promise to myself. I would study this technique the way a warrior studies a weapon. Because if ibuki could transform even a single modern human, me, then what else was it capable of? The deeper I explored ibuki, the more I wanted to understand why it worked. The samurai had their own explanations: ki, intention, hara, inner fire. But I wanted to see what modern science could reveal about this 400-year secret. That's when I stumbled onto something remarkable. Research from Kyoto University, focusing on HRV, or heart rate variability. HRV is one of the most important markers of your nervous system's resilience. It measures the tiny variations between heartbeats. Variations so small that you can't feel them, but your nervous system responds to them instantly. High HRV means you can switch from stress to calm, from fatigue to focus, from chaos to clarity with ease. Low HRV means you're locked in tension, drained, foggy, reactive. Kyoto University researchers discovered that specific inhale-hold-exhale patterns nearly identical to the described Ibuki cycles, triggered rapid boosts in parasympathetic activity. In simple terms, your brain becomes sharper, your body steadier, your awareness brighter. When I read the data, I felt the same chill that ran down my spine when I first read about Seiken. One study showed that in 90 seconds, HRV could spike significantly. Another found that focused exhalations increased sustained attention far more effectively than caffeine or rest breaks. They weren't studying samurai, they were studying breath. But the overlap was undeniable. When I compared the modern findings with the old scrolls, the similarities were almost eerie. The samurai described a sensation of inner quiet sharpening the outer world. Kyoto researchers described a heightened state of attentional readiness. Two languages separated by centuries, pointing to the same truth. To visualize it, imagine two charts. In the first chart, the HRV baseline before breathwork looks jagged, unstable, like someone trying to stand on shifting stones. Your attention wavers, your thoughts scatter, your energy drains without warning. In the second chart, taken just after a session of rhythmic breathing, the pattern smooths and expands. The peaks are higher, the rhythm steadier. It's the difference between a flickering candle and a steady flame. When I saw those charts, I understood something profound. The samurai weren't tapping into magic. They were tapping into biology. Biology we forgot, but they mastered. And suddenly, the image of Sakon moving through the fog didn't feel mythical anymore. It felt scientific, measurable, repeatable. It felt human. Now that we understand both the history and the science, let me take you into the core of the practice itself. This is the original structure of Ibuki, preserved in martial traditions and echoed by modern physiology. When I learned it, I realized why the samurai considered it not just a technique, but an internal discipline, an invisible weapon forged from breath. Ibuki has 3 steps, simple on paper, transformative in practice. The key isn't complexity, it's precision. Each phase activates a different part of your nervous system, a different movement of ki, a different state of mind. And when they flow together, something inside you changes. The first step is inhale. You breathe sharply through the nose, letting the air drop low into the belly, not the chest. Your abdomen rises like it's being filled, like you're drawing power directly into your hara. When you do it right, there's a feeling of expansion, a pressure that awakens the center of your body. Imagine Sakon beneath the cedar tree doing exactly this, preparing to cross the battlefield. The second step is hold. This part is short, just enough to feel a gathering of energy, not a strain. The samurai believed this moment collected the kai, drawing it inward for a heartbeat before it was released. And in modern terms, it prepares the vagus nerve for the long, controlled exhale that follows. The third step is exhale, through the mouth, soft but deliberate. Not a sigh, not a blow, but a steady release, like fogging a mirror in slow motion. This is where the body shifts. This is where the mind sharpens. This is the part that Kyoto researchers found most responsible for the HRV rise. When I practiced it the first time, the exhale felt like a thin stream of heat leaving my body, carrying tension with it. If you're new to Ibuki, try focusing on how each phase feels. The inhale is awakening. The hold is gathering. The exhale is releasing. Together, they create a flow that feels both ancient and strangely familiar. Like your body always knew how to do this, but you forgot somewhere along the way. The more I practiced these 3 steps, the more I understood how a scout could stay oriented in a mountain maze. How a warrior could remain steady in chaos. How a human could stay awake for 72 hours without losing themselves. Because Ibuki doesn't just change your breath. It changes the space inside your mind. Now I want to guide you through the felt experience of Ibuki. The way the samurai would have practiced it. The way I practice it now. The way you can feel its power immediately. This is where the technique stops being an idea and becomes something alive inside your body. When I first tried this guided round, something shifted in me. Maybe it was focus. Maybe it was ki. Maybe it was both. Before we begin, sit comfortably. Keep your spine tall, but not stiff. Imagine you're sitting like a warrior at rest. Alert, grounded, present. Let your hands rest on your thighs or lightly over your belly. And now, follow my voice exactly. Now, breathe in. Feel the air dropping into your belly. Let the abdomen expand like a rising wave. Draw in a little more. Hold it gently. Now exhale slowly. Let the breath leave like mist fading into the morning air. That was 1 cycle. Let's go again, slower, deeper, with more awareness. Now breathe in. Fill the lower belly. Feel it press outward. Let the breath travel down, not up. Hold it, not as tension, but as gathering. Now exhale slowly. Longer. Softer. Let the shoulders melt as the air leaves you. 1 more. Imagine Sakan doing this under the cedar tree, moments before stepping into the unknown. Imagine the samurai, who trusted this breath more than food, more than rest, more than the world around them. Now breathe in. Belly rising, chest steady. Hold it. Feel the warmth building. Now exhale slowly. Let everything unnecessary drain from the body. Let the mind become sharp. Let the ki settle in your center. When I guide people through this sequence, there's always a moment, usually after the 3rd round, when their face softens, their eyes brighten, and they sit a little taller. It's the moment the breath takes hold. The moment Ibuki stops being a technique and becomes a state of being. Have you ever felt a sudden shift inside your body, like clarity arriving before you even understand why? That's what Ibuki begins to open. If you're sensitive, you may feel your heartbeat steadying. If you're observant, you may feel thoughts spacing out. Less noise, more intention. If you're tired, you might notice a brightening behind your eyes. This is the beginning of what the samurai called inner stillness, outer sharpness. This is where the invisible weapon wakes up. Before Ibuki becomes a reliable ally, an invisible weapon you can summon at any moment, you need to understand the mistakes that weaken it. Even the samurai, as disciplined as they were, trained for years to avoid these subtle errors. When I first began practicing, I fell into every single one of them. It wasn't until I corrected these details that the breath finally felt like the 400-year secret I had read about. The first mistake is lifting the shoulders during the inhale. Modern stress conditioning teaches us to breathe high in the chest, pulling the shoulders upward, But Ibuki demands the opposite. The breath must drop low, into the hara. If your shoulders rise even a little, the energy scatters upward. The samurai believe this caused the ki to float, weakening both focus and presence. When I stopped lifting my shoulders, the breath suddenly felt heavier, fuller, more grounded. The second mistake is forcing the hold. Beginners often try to lock the air inside their chest using tension. But Ibuki's hold is not a clench. It's a gathering. You hold just enough to feel the breath settle, but not enough to create strain. Too much tension tightens the throat and blocks the flow. Too little, and the exhale loses its power. I remember the first time I got the balance right. It felt like someone had turned a key inside my abdomen. The third mistake is rushing the exhale. This is the most common error. Ibuki's exhale is the heart of the technique, the moment when clarity emerges. But if you let the air collapse out of your mouth, the nervous system doesn't shift. It's the slow release that triggers the HRV rise described by Kyoto University researchers. When I finally matched the pace described in the old scrolls, steady, warm, like fog on a winter morning, I felt the same stillness the samurai wrote about. Another mistake is squeezing the throat. A tight throat chokes the breath and collapses the sound. The original Ibuki exhale is audible, but soft, like steel sliding from its sheath. When the throat is relaxed, the sound becomes effortless and the energy flows naturally through the center line of the body. And finally, the mistake few people talk about, losing intention. Ibuki isn't mechanical. It lives at the intersection of breath and awareness. The samurai practiced it not as a relaxation exercise, but as a preparation for presence. When your mind wanders, the breath loses its edge. When your awareness sharpens, the breath becomes something entirely different, something alive. Have you ever noticed how doing something right feels completely different when your attention is truly there? That's what you're aiming for. Not perfection, presence. Once these mistakes dissolve, the technique begins to reveal itself. The inhale awakens, the hold gathers, the exhale sharpens, and slowly, breath by breath, you start to understand why a warrior trusted it more than sleep. Now that the technique is clear, let's bring Ibuki into the real world, the modern battlefield most of us face every day. The samurai used this breath to survive chaos, maintain clarity, and move through danger without losing themselves. Today, the enemies look different, but the inner struggle is the same. Fatigue, distraction, mental fog, stress that drains the spirit long before it touches the body. The first place Ibuki becomes powerful is study. I've used it on nights when my mind was drowning in pages of text, when the words blurred, when concentration felt impossible. Just 3 cycles of Ibuki transformed the experience. The breath pulls the mind into the present moment, not relaxed and sleepy, but awake and sharp. Exactly the state the Kyoto University researchers described as attentional readiness. If you've ever sat at your desk and felt your brain refusing to cooperate, Ibuki is the switch that turns the lights back on. The second place it shines is work, especially during transitions. Most people don't realize how much mental friction comes from switching tasks. Emails, meetings, problem solving. Each demands a different kind of focus. Ibuki resets your internal state in less than a minute. I've used it between calls, before important presentations, even while stepping outside for a moment of clarity. The exhale cuts through the noise. The inhale brings the mind into alignment, and the hold tightens the focus like drawing a bow. The third area is sports and movement. The samurai used Ibuki to stabilize the body under pressure, and the same effect appears in modern practice. Practice. Before a run, before lifting, before sparring, Ibuki steadies the nervous system. It quiets the noise and sharpens the intention. I remember using it before a particularly difficult training session, a moment where doubt was louder than confidence. After 3 rounds, the hesitation dissolved, replaced by something colder, steadier, more certain. It wasn't hype. It was clarity. Have you ever felt like your body was ready, but your mind was scattered? That gap is where Ibuki becomes transformative. It bridges physical readiness with mental presence, breath tying the 2 halves of you back together. And here's the most important part. Ibuki doesn't require 20 minutes, or candles, or quiet rooms. It was designed for warriors who didn't have time. It belongs in the middle of your day, in the hallway before a test, in the car before work, in the gym before a set, in the pause between 2 overwhelming moments. That is where it reveals its power. That is where the invisible weapon becomes yours. To truly feel the depth of Ibuki, not just as a technique, but as a shift in the way your mind and body operate, you need to live with it for a few days. The samurai didn't practice Ibuki once and expect mastery. They repeated it daily, sharpening the breath the way they sharpened their blades. So I built a simple 7-day trial, inspired by their discipline, and aligned with what modern physiology tells us about habit formation. On day 1 and day 2, you begin with just 3 rounds in the morning, nothing dramatic, nothing overwhelming. When I started, these 2 days felt like waking a part of myself that had been dormant for years. You might feel warmth in the belly, brightness in the eyes, steadiness in the breath. You might also feel nothing at all, and that's fine. Even the samurai wrote that the first days were about entering the gate. On day 3 and day 4, add 3 more rounds right before studying or working. This is where things begin to shift in noticeable ways. When I did this, I realized that my mind wasn't slipping into distraction as easily. Tasks felt smoother. My attention didn't fray like it usually did. The long exhale, the same one highlighted by Kyoto University's HRV studies, created a kind of internal stability I had never experienced from caffeine or sleep. It didn't hype me up. It anchored me. By day 5, something interesting happens. You no longer have to remember Ibuki. Your body asks for it. Your breath calls for it. Moments of fatigue become triggers. Moments of stress become invitations. I remember sitting down to write on day 5 and catching myself doing Ibuki automatically, like my body knew it needed alignment before my mind even realized it. On day 6 and day 7, the transformation becomes clearer. Use a single round of Ibuki every time your focus slips. It could be twice a day. It could be 10. You don't force it. You respond to the moment. The samurai called this breathing with the needs of the battlefield. And the phrase makes perfect sense after living it. By the 7th night, I noticed something that surprised me. My baseline state was different. Calmer without being dull. Alert without being tense. There was space between my thoughts, and in that space, decisions became easier, reactions softer, awareness brighter. Have you ever gone through a week and realized quietly that you were a better version of yourself than you were 7 days earlier? That is what the Ibuki trial creates. A gradual sharpening, not of strength or speed, but of presence. This 7-day journey isn't about mastering a breathing technique. It's about remembering a capacity you already have. A capacity ancient warriors harnessed. A capacity your own biology supports. A capacity that returns the moment you breathe with intention. And once you feel it, even once, you understand why Ibuki wasn't just a method. It was a companion, a discipline, a way of moving through the world with clarity when others moved through it blind. As the 7-day rhythm settles into your life, something deeper begins to unfold, something the samurai understood long before science could explain it. They believed that breath was the bridge between the physical and the unseen, between the body and the kai, between the outer battle and the inner one. And when you live with Ibuki long enough, you begin to feel why they treated it not just as training, but as a spiritual discipline. For the warriors of Sekigahara, Ibuki was more than survival. It was alignment. Alignment with purpose. Alignment with awareness. Alignment with the quiet center inside every human being that remains steady even when the world is chaos. When I crossed into this phase of practice, it felt less like I was doing a technique and more like I was remembering a way of being. My mind didn't race the way it used to. Decisions felt less like obstacles and more like gentle movements of attention. The world didn't slow down, but the noise inside me did. I understood why old martial texts described Ibuki as the moment the blade becomes the hand and the hand becomes the mind. Science has its own explanations for this. Consistent breathwork tones the vagus nerve, boosts HRV, strengthens resilience. But the experience itself is something language struggles to capture. It isn't calmness. It isn't energy. It's a kind of clarity that feels older than you are. The samurai wrote that when Ibuki is mastered, the kai settles in the hara, like a lantern placed at the center of a house. The walls don't change. The rooms don't change. But suddenly, there is light everywhere. And that is how the long-term effects feel. You aren't controlling the world, just illuminating your way through it. Have you ever felt a moment where everything inside you aligned so perfectly that effort and ease became the same thing? That rare moment is what Ibuki nurtures until it becomes a quiet, reliable companion. With time, the breath becomes not just a tool, but a way of carrying yourself. You walk differently. You think differently. You respond differently. Because Ibuki teaches you something profound. Clarity is not a mood. Clarity is a practice. And that is how a 400-year secret still lives inside a modern body. Quiet, powerful, invisible. When I look back at everything Ibuki has revealed to me, the history, the science, the experience inside my own body, I'm struck by how seamlessly these worlds connect. A breath born on a battlefield in 1600, refined by warriors who lived and died by their awareness, and rediscovered centuries later through HRV charts and nervous system research. It feels almost poetic that something so ancient fits so perfectly into the framework of modern physiology. But what stays with me most deeply isn't the data or even the historical reenactments. It's the realization that Ibuki bridges two human truths that have always existed: the need for clarity and the reality of chaos. Every one of us wakes up each day and steps onto a battlefield of our own. Responsibilities, expectations, pressures, uncertainties. The fog of Sekigahara looks different now, but it still surrounds us. When I breathe with Ibuki, I feel a direct line between my life and theirs. The inhalation that awakens, the hold that gathers, the exhale that sharpens. These movements are the same movements Sakon used under the cedar tree, the same movements the samurai trusted when they had no room for error, no luxury of fatigue, no margin for confusion. And I find comfort in that continuity, comfort in knowing that clarity is not a gift, but a craft, comfort in knowing that presence is not luck, but practice, Comfort in knowing that even across 4 centuries, the human body still answers to the same call. Have you ever felt connected to something older than yourself? Something that made your own struggles feel less isolated, more universal? That's what Ibuki offers. A reminder that resilience is not invented, it's inherited. As I carry this breath into my everyday life, it feels less like adopting a technique and more like joining a lineage. A lineage of warriors, thinkers, monks, scientists, anyone who has ever reached for the quiet center inside themselves when the world demanded more than their tired mind could offer. And in that lineage, the breath becomes more than air. It becomes a direction, a promise, a way forward through any maze, ancient or modern. If you followed this journey from the misty trails of Sekigahara to the warmth gathering now in your own hara, then you already understand the heart of this practice. Ibuki isn't just a breathing method. It isn't just a samurai legend. It isn't just a scientific curiosity validated by HRV studies from Kyoto University. It is a reminder that clarity is always within reach, that the invisible weapon you've been searching for has been inside your chest since the day you were born, that the 400-year secret the warriors carried across battlefields can help you navigate your own maze. Whether that maze is stress, distraction, exhaustion, or simply the weight of being human. And now, I want to invite you to step deeper. If this breath has sparked even a moment of presence in you, imagine what it can do in 21 days. Imagine how your mornings could feel. Imagine how your focus could sharpen. Imagine how your inner world could settle into something steadier, clearer, more intentional than anything you've experienced before. I created a 21-day breath mastery challenge for exactly this reason, to help you build a personal discipline that grows stronger with each inhale, each hold, each slow exhale. A discipline that connects you not just to your biology, but to a lineage of warriors who understood what it meant to stand present in the middle of chaos. If you want more practices like this, more secrets rooted in history and confirmed by science, make sure you subscribe, turn on notifications, and join the challenge. This channel is where ancient breathing meets modern neuroscience, where tradition meets transformation. Your breath is your first companion, your oldest teacher, your invisible weapon. Use it well. I'll see you in the next training.